People make all kinds of different instruments all over the world. They use all different kinds of materials. Some things are made out of, well, practically whatever is on hand. In West Africa, there is actually an instrument called a shekere. No, I did not say Shakira. I'm not talking about someone whose hips don't lie. I am talking about an instrument, an idiophone, something that hits against itself in order to make a sound. The basic components of a shekere include a hollow gourd, which has a hole to let sound out. It's been drilled there, also to get the insides out, otherwise, can you imagine what that thing would smell like? But in addition to the hollowed out gourd, you have netting that is wrapped around it, and woven into that netting are shells or beads. And the instrument is generally played by either rubbing it back and forth against the gourd or shaking the whole gourd to make some sort of rhythmic sound. Now, I don't think that everybody has dried gourds just laying around your house. If it's the fall, maybe you do. But there are some things that you can use which you have materials for already to make something that is very akin to a shekere with things lying around the house. And I'm going to show you how. First, let's think about some of the materials that we would need. We need our gourd first. Now, I said that you may not have a gourd laying around the house, but something that you probably do have, which would have a hole in the top already and a shape that you could build around, would be some sort of large plastic bottle. It could be a 2-liter soda bottle. It could be a plastic milk jug. It could be an orange juice container. For me, I just did laundry the other day, and I ran out of laundry detergent. So I have an empty laundry detergent container. Conveniently, this also has a handle that we can grab onto when we're making sounds. Notice, nice big hole in the container already at the top, so we don't have to do anything to make a new hole. So that will be our gourd that we're going to build the instrument on. Next, need some sort of material to make the netting. Now, any sort of string would work for this. You may have some sort of yarn, or perhaps someone has butcher's twine, or has some sort of thin rope. For me, a quick trip to the dollar store, I was able to get some nylon parachute cording. Now, a word of advice, if you use nylon cording, notice that this is frayed at the end. Have an adult work with you so that when you cut things, you can take a lighter, a match, or a candle and be able to close off the ends, fuse off the ends. You notice that instead of having this frayed end here with all the cording out, the piece that I've already cut has a black fused end so that it will not unwind and pull apart. But that only happens with nylon cord, so you want to make sure that if you use that, it's a way to make sure that you protect your parts of the instrument. Finally, we're going to want to have something to use as a bead. Now, you may have beads laying around the house. You may have shells lying around the house. I don't know. But most people don't. However, something that most people do have or can pick up with a quick trip to the grocery store, pasta. Yeah, we're taking Africa via Italy. I have a nice big bag of rigatoni here. Now, the reason that rigatoni is a good choice, pardon noise, is because they are little tubes, and you can see there is a nice large space, a large hole, that I can take when we're getting ready to thread things, my larger parachute cord, and it will string on there without any trouble at all. Now, if you happen to use yarn or twine or a thinner cord, you could use some other pasta, like a ziti or some sort of other thinner thing that would be cut in a similar tube manner. I would avoid using macaroni or shells or things that have bends in them just because it's harder to thread things through. So now we have our shell component, we have our cords, we have our shell to build upon, our gourd. Now it is time to see how we can assemble. When we're getting ready to cut the cords to be able to wrap around and make the netting, just like they make on the traditional shekere, we're going to have to make sure that whatever container we have, we can cut things to the right size. So, the way that you want to handle that is by taking your cord and measuring out two different lengths first. You want to pull it out plenty long and take the widest portion of your container. In this case, it's going to be the bottom of my container. Hold it down around there, wrap around the entirety of it, and then come over 1.5 inches to 2 inches past. And that would be where you cut. That will be the width that you will want to have for your strings for 5 different strings. The reason for the overlap is so that we have room to eventually tie them off. Now, if the width changes over time, as you see it does here with the handle, then you have some adjustment that later on you can cut sections and fuse them back closed, if you have the nylon cord like I do. The other portion that you want to cut, you want to go from, now that we've done the width, we need to do the length, right? Take your string, put it at the very top, go down to the very bottom, and remember, you want some room to be able to tie, so try to go about 1.5 inches to 2 inches past on the length, again, and cut that so that you have your 2 measuring cords. Again, 5 of the one that wraps around, 5 of the one that makes the length, so that we are going to be able to have pieces to weave together, tie together, and have space. Your next step will be to take the longer cords, the ones that wrapped around your gourd, and string some of the beads on them. Remember, I said 5s. That's my goal for being able to put things together. It may end up being less. That depends on how much space we have when we finally tie things together, but it's a good target. You notice because I said 5, I put 5 of the pieces of pasta on here. And what we are going to do then is take that, now that we've strung that as a base, and wrap it around the center of the echoing chamber. And tie it firm. You want to make sure that you are pulling it nice and tight so that it will stay in place. But it needs to be loose enough that it can move to make sound when you shake it, and also so that the beads, the pasta, can move around when you have new pieces to add to it. You will continue to do this all the way up the instrument until the top row. As it turns out, I had targeted 5, but only had 4 that fit, but that is okay. It doesn't matter as long as you have multiple rows. And you can see how I have the pasta strung all around and fairly evenly spaced. Now the even spacing is going to become important in a moment. There's enough room that you can slide things back and forth to be able to adjust. What we are going to do next, you have the basics of the instrument there, but you don't have a netting, do you? In order to make it a netting, you need to have the chords that go up and down. And you will put those in by first tying off one end on top or on bottom, and you can go up from the bottom to the top. Direction doesn't matter because you're going to have to tie off both ends. And now instead of stringing them on in advance, we're going to string a bead in between each individually. And we're going to weave over-under pattern as we're skipping rows and spacing things out. That way you do not necessarily have to tie each row. Now, if you choose to tie off each row, that is fine. In fact, tying each row will actually make it, or at least looping each row, will make it so that we have less likelihood of things sliding back and forth. In the end, it's actually very organic how you decide to assemble it and weave it into a net. You just have to keep working through until you have all of the spacings completed. And you will see that it pushes things apart as you are putting them in there. Takes a little bit of time to be able to go through the entire thing. Be patient. The end result will be interesting enough that you'll have a little fun with it. Now, I finished putting the webbing together by weaving things in and through. Notice that it's a grid because there's pasta in each part. Okay? But also notice, I started from the bottom to the top. I decided to switch things around. But you could do it the other direction, like I said. I have all these extra strands at the top. Now, rather than cutting them short, something that we can do, and is something that was often done, we can actually tie these together. And then finish the netting over it by taking a shorter cord, looping it through those a couple times, maybe even, depending on the space that you've got. So that you can tie them all together. And you have a handle to pull at the top as well. Now you can see this is our completed Shekere. You can play it by rubbing it. You can play it by shaking it. You can pull it with the handle that you put on top. The more rows that you're able to put together and the more space that you leave between, the looser it'll be, the more likely it will rattle. I made this just to give you the basics of how to construct it. It is an idiophone, not an idiot phone. No, the people who made this are not stupid. Very smart, in fact. An idiophone, remember, is something that strikes upon itself, like a rattle or a cymbal when somebody hits it. You have to strike a portion of it to make it work. In this case, it strikes itself. I hope you had a little bit of fun constructing this instrument and learning a little bit more about something that's not typical to your culture.